The drawing room buzzed with voices, tables lined with pamphlets, and old books. Mrs. Dolly Bantry greeted each visitor with her warm smile. Colonel Bantry stood nearby, nodding politely. The hospital fund event had begun. Reverend Clement examined a clock. Mrs. Clement admired portraits. Dr. Haydock lifted a silver piece. Checking its marks, Inspector Slack, off duty, lingered by the military display. The Bantrys played their roles as hosts. James the butler moved quietly. Mabel Finch from the village distributed printed programs. Guests walked through the hall, commenting, judging, admiring. It was all running smoothly. Then the new man arrived, tall, silver-haired, polished, Basil Mond, introduced as a rare book scout, eyes sharp, smile smooth. He praised the house. He praised Dolly's efforts. But his gaze wandered, not on the furniture, not on the tea. His eyes fixed, on the stack of pamphlets from the attic. Dolly noticed. He asked questions about boundaries, about ownership, about old family documents. Mr. Simmons, the solicitor, frowned slightly. Something in Man's tone felt calculated. Another guest stood with him, Lionel Swin, a London dealer, eyes restless, measuring each object, weighing each value. Mond leaned closer to Dolly. "I should like to stay the night," he said, his voice calm. "I want to study the papers further. The Blue Room has good light." Dolly hesitated. The Blue Room. It had been closed since Christmas, isolated at the corridor's end, family pieces inside. A view of the garden. She forced a polite smile. "You are welcome, of course. But the room is quiet. Perhaps too quiet." Man's lips curved. "Perfect. I work best without distraction." Colonel Bantry muttered under his breath. "A stranger asking for the Blue Room." Dolly hushed him quickly. Guests must not hear. The afternoon stretched on, Mond charmed with small talk. But Dolly noticed something else. He and Swin whispered by the library window. Low voices, agitated faces. Her approach silenced them. Mond smoothly deflected. "Mr. Swin was admiring your hall portrait," he said. Guests departed one by one. Mond remained, studying, as if Gossington Hall itself was his concern. Evening fell. Colonel dozed in his chair. Dolly checked the last trays cleared. She glanced outside. Her eyes froze. Mond walked across the lawn, dusk settling, shoes visible. As he stepped back inside, mud clung to them. But the rain had not yet begun. The garden was dry, no puddles, no reason for mud. Dolly's breath caught. Why were his shoes muddy? The stranger had asked for the Blue Room, and he returned with mud. No one could explain. The guests had gone. Only Mond stayed. Dolly felt unsettled. She walked to the telephone. Her hand shook. Slightly. She dialed. "Jane, it's Dolly." Her voice low. "There's a stranger here. I don't feel easy. Would you stay the night?" Miss Marple answered calmly. "Of course, dear. James can collect me." Relief spread through Dolly. 7 o'clock. We dined together. She replaced the receiver. Her unease grew. She saw Mond through the window again. He had returned from the village, his shoes still muddy. The ground outside, still dry. James entered quietly. "Madam, dinner will be ready soon." Dolly nodded. Her thoughts remained on Mond. At 7, James fetched Miss Marple. She arrived in her gentle way. Knitting bag in hand, eyes sharp, though soft. She greeted Dolly warmly. "Always a pleasure to see Gossington again." Mond joined them at table. He spoke of travels, cities, auctions, rare books. His tone smooth. But every direct question about his research, he dodged. "I prefer not to discuss until I am certain," he said. His smile never left. Colonel grumbled. "I dislike riddles," he muttered. Mond only chuckled. "Truth has its time." Miss Marple listened silently. Her needles clicked. Her eyes never left him. Then Lionel Swin arrived, late. He apologized for the hour, his coat dry, though he claimed rain. He looked restless. He checked his watch. Again and again. Colonel raised his brows. "What brings you back?" Swin forced a smile. "Business in London early. I thought I'd stop once more. The portrait deserves another look." He sat, but he barely touched the food. His glance moved between Mand and Dolly. Something hidden, something unspoken. Dinner pressed on. Mond entertained with anecdotes. Swin silent. Colonel impatient. Dolly distracted. Then James entered with wine. He poured carefully. The glasses filled. Mand lifted his. He sipped. He paused. His expression shifted. His brow furrowed. His lips pressed. He set the glass down, slowly. Dolly noticed. So did Miss Marple. Mand forced a laugh. "Perhaps my palate is overworked." But his eyes told another story. Uncomfortable, guarded, troubled. The table fell quiet, for a moment. Only the sound of cutlery, only the tick of the clock. Mand's fingers lingered on the glass, and the strange taste had already been swallowed. The plates were cleared. The talk thinned. Mand's glass still sat before him, half full, untouched since his frown. Dolly tried to smile. She asked small questions. Mand gave short answers. His charm felt forced. His hand never touched the glass again. Colonel shifted in his chair. "Not to your taste, sir?" Mand looked up. Perhaps a little sharp tonight. He said no more. Swin leaned back, his eyes on the glass, not on Mand, on the wine. His lips pressed tight. He said nothing. Miss Marple knitted. Needles clicked in rhythm. Her eyes flicked once to the glass, then back to her work. She spoke of nothing. The room eased into silence. Only cutlery. Small coughs. Shifting. Chairs. No one mentioned the wine again. James re-entered. He moved with quiet precision. He lifted the unused glass first. Then he reached Mund's, still half full, heavy. He paused. At the bottom of the glass, faint lines. Something clung to the curve. Residue. James tilted the glass carefully. The liquid caught the light. Something remained settled, not clear, not right. He looked at Dolly. She caught his glance. He moved on quickly. He carried the tray out, expression unchanged. In the pantry, Dr. Haydock stood waiting. He had lingered behind. James showed him the glass. The doctor bent close. He sniffed lightly, then whispered, "This is odd. Very odd." James's jaw tightened. "What do you think, sir?" Haydock shook his head. "Not wine alone. I cannot be sure. But something has been added." He set the glass back. "Say nothing, not yet." James nodded. The doctor straightened. He walked back into the hall. Expression calm, voice steady. The guests carried on. Mand smiled again, forced. He turned conversation to trivial things. No one pressed him. No one asked about the glass. Miss Marple watched him carefully. Her needles never slowed, but her eyes sharpened. She noticed his hand tremble. Once, she noticed how he avoided looking at the tray as it left. Swin excused himself early. He spoke of trains, of London business, but his hand brushed the table edge as he stood. His eyes flicked again, toward the missing glass. The evening closed slowly. Small talk filled the gaps. The unease never left. Every guest felt it. No one named it. James returned to the pantry. He opened the service log. He wrote in his neat hand, one line only. "Wine glass. Residue noted. 850. The log closed. James alone knew the glass had carried a hidden attempt. The drawing room settled. Mand leaned back. Swin excused himself Again. Colonel refilled his pipe. Miss Marple's needles clicked. Steady. Dolly left the room. Quietly. She walked toward the hall table. There it was, a folded envelope, placed on the polished surface. Unmarked. Her hand froze. She looked around. No one there. The envelope waited, thin, plain, too deliberate. She opened it, slowly. Inside a single card, few words. Your time ends at 9:07. Her stomach turned cold, not addressed, not signed, just the line, just the numbers. She closed the card quickly. Her hand shook. She slipped it into her pocket. Her mind raced. Who placed it? What did it mean? James appeared in the corridor. Madame more tea? She forced a smile. No, James. That will be all. He bowed and left. He noticed nothing. Dolly returned to the drawing room, her face calm, her hands tight on her dress. Mand was talking again. Colonel half listened. Swin had already gone upstairs. Miss Marple glanced at Dolly, eyes sharp, not fooled. She saw the unease. She leaned. Closer? Something, Dolly, she whispered. Dolly slipped the card into her hand. Only Miss Marple saw it. Marple read it, once. Her lips pressed thin, her eyes flicked to the clock, then back to Dolly. Say nothing yet, she murmured, her voice steady, her tone final. Colonel looked up. All right, Dolly? She nodded quickly. Yes, Arthur, all fine. Her voice betrayed nothing. Mand poured himself water. He avoided the wine. He looked pale, but still talked of travel. Dr. Haydock leaned toward Dolly. Everything quite well? She forced another smile. Of course. The room carried on, conversation thin, shadows heavy with silence. Miss Marple kept the card in her hand. She folded it twice, slipped it into her knitting bag, safe, hidden, waiting. The clock on the mantel ticked loud, each sound sharp. The minute hand moved slow, toward the number, toward the time. No one else knew. Only Dolly, only Marple. The numbers pressed into their thoughts. 9:07. The air thickened with waiting. Colonel checked his watch. Dr. Haydock tapped the table. Mand looked restless. Dolly's heart beat, heavy. The clock face gleamed. The hand slid, one step closer. Then another. The clock struck 9, and the warning still whispered, 9:07. The evening dragged. Voices thinned. Mand had retired upstairs, early. His papers carried under his arm. Colonel yawned. He leaned back in his chair. Dr. Haydock shuffled cards, but never dealt them. Miss Marple knitted on. Needles clicked, steady. Lionel Swin rose suddenly. He forced a smile. Mrs. Bantry, might I trouble you? She looked up. He gestured toward the hall. That portrait of your husband's grandfather. I wish another look. The light earlier was poor. Dolly hesitated. It was late. But she agreed. They walked together. The corridor clock struck the half-hour, 9:35. In the servants' hall, James polished silver. The indicator board faced him. Mrs. Beddoes stacked dishes. The staff moved quietly. Then it came, a sharp ping, metal against metal. James looked up at once. The brass disc dropped. The needle pointed clear. Blue room, James said firmly. He wrote at once in the log, 9:40. Blue room rang, his hand, precise. Mrs. Beddoes frowned. Nightcap, perhaps, or fire too low. James nodded. He closed the book. Duty, marked. Upstairs, Dolly stood with Lionel. They stared at the old portrait. Lionel murmured about brushstrokes. Dolly heard little. Her eyes flicked to the clock. 9:40. She felt her chest tighten. The words in the card echoed. Your time ends at 9:07. The numbers pressed into her thoughts. Yet now it was 9:40. Why had the bell rung? She excused herself. Lionel thanked her. He bowed, slightly. Then he turned back toward the stairs. Dolly rejoined the others. She forced calm. Miss Marple looked at her once, then back to her knitting. In the servants' hall, James prepared a tray, a small brandy, a glass of water. He walked the east corridor, steps measured, tray steady. He reached the blue room. He knocked. "Mr. Mand, your nightcap, sir." Silence. He knocked again, harder this time. No answer. He tried the handle. It did not move. The bolt held firm. James bent closer. He listened. No sound. No cough. No shuffle. Nothing. His brow tightened. He turned back. At once. He hurried down the stairs. His steps quick. His face pale. He reached Colonel Bantry. He spoke low. "Sir, the blue room door is locked. No answer from inside." Colonel set aside his pipe. His eyes narrowed. He stood. Miss Marple placed her knitting aside. The room felt heavier. Dolly gripped the chair arm. Her unease deepened. The card's warning rang louder. In her head, the blue room door was locked, and Mand did not reply. Colonel moved first. His steps firm. James followed. Dolly and Miss Marple close behind. They reached the door. Colonel struck it hard. "Mand, do you hear me?" Silence. He struck again. The sound echoed. Still no reply. James whispered, "Bolt is across, sir." Colonel pressed the handle. Solid. The door held. Dr. Haydock arrived with his bag. He glanced at the others. "Force it." Colonel braced himself. James helped. One heave. The wood groaned. Second push. The lock snapped. The door swung wide. They froze. Mand sat in the armchair, head tilted, eyes half shut, skin pale, hands slack. On the table a teacup, saucer beneath it, liquid untouched. Beside it, a brown bottle, its cork off, half empty. The windows were latched, the curtains drawn. The key lay on the carpet, inches from his hand. The bolt on the door, shot firm. Dr. Haydock bent quickly. He touched the wrist. No pulse. He touched the chest. Stillness. He checked the face. Lips, faintly blue. "He's gone," Haydock said flatly. "An hour at least." Dolly gasped. Colonel stepped back. James lowered his eyes. Miss Marple moved no closer. Inspector Slack entered late, coat dripping. He frowned. "Heart failure. Clear enough. Bottle proves it." Haydock shook his head. "Not so clear. Symptoms are wrong." Slack waved him off. "Man took too much. That's all." Marple's eyes studied. The shoes. The table. The fallen key. Her gaze fixed on the teacup, a faint smear beneath. She said nothing yet. Her eyes sharp. Her needles rested in her bag. Colonel muttered, "Locked inside, bolt across, key in here, impossible for another hand." Slack agreed. "Exactly. Tragic but simple." Haydock still crouched. An hour, perhaps more, body already cooling. Dolly whispered. "But the bell rang. We all heard it." Slack shrugged. He rang, then collapsed. Marple's head moved slightly, her lips pressed, her voice quiet. Or someone wished us to believe he rang. Dolly stared at her. Colonel frowned. James gripped the tray tighter. No one spoke further. The room hung heavy, the body slumped, the bottle open, the door broken. Dolly pressed her handkerchief to her lips. Her voice cracked. "All this in our home." Miss Marple stepped closer to her. Her hand rested briefly on Dolly's arm, software steady, calm. Then she leaned toward her, her voice a whisper, measured, certain. "He was already dead, long before 9:40. Inspector Slack entered the room. His coat dripped. His boots left marks on the floor. His face set. He looked at Mand's body, then at the bottle, then at the cup. "Well then," he said, "plain enough. Overdose. Case closed." Colonel bristled. "You call this plain? A man dies in my house." Slack shrugged. He took too much. End of story. Dr. Haydock rose from the body, his voice firm. Number. The signs are not right. Slack frowned. What signs? Skin tone, Haydock said. Pulse gone earlier than expected. And the lips. That is not heart failure. Slack waved him off. You doctors always find shadows. A man dies. It happens. Miss Marple stood quietly by the window. She spoke softly. And yet, Inspector, there is mud. All turned to her. She pointed at man's shoes. They were dry, but the soles showed mud, thick, brown. Colonel stared. But there was no rain till after 9. The garden was dry. Dolly nodded. I saw him earlier. Shoes muddy then, but ground was not wet. Slack scowled. Perhaps he walked further off. Fields, lane. Who knows? Marple's eyes narrowed. And yet, if he left the house, when did he return, and why lock himself in? James shifted uneasily. I served him tea at 9:15. Shoes were already muddy. He spoke low. The bell rang at 9:40, yet Dr. Haydock says he was dead before. Slack turned on him. You keep your notes. Leave conclusions to me. James fell silent. Dr. Haydock persisted. I tell you, this looks like poison, something strong, something deliberate. Slack snapped. Nonsense, he brought that bottle. He drank from it. That is all, Dolly whispered. But why the bell? Why ring us after death? Slack stiffened. Perhaps he rang, then collapsed. That's it. Marple spoke again, her tone calm. Or perhaps the bell was meant for us, not by him. Her eyes rested on the indicator board in her mind, her needles, still. Slack's voice grew harsh. You spin tales. Facts are clear. Locked from inside. Bolt shot. Key within. No murderer could enter. The room went quiet. Dolly's hands trembled. Colonel's face burned red. Dr. Haydock shook his head. James looked down at his notes. Miss Marple's gaze stayed steady. Her voice almost gentle. Then we must look again. What seems closed may only appear so. Slack slammed his hand on the table. His voice sharp. Locked from inside. No murderer possible. Miss Marple sat in the morning room. Mrs. Beddoes stood before her, hands folded, face stern. Marple's voice was quiet. You took up a tray? Yes, madam, at 9:15. Tea only. Yes, a pot, a cup, a plate of biscuits. Marple nodded. And Mr. Mand? He seemed tired, said little. He waved me away. I left the tray and closed the door. James entered with his ledger. I logged it, 8:45, tray delivered. Marple asked, and after? James glanced at Beddoes. She went again. Beddoes stiffened. At 9:15, I carried the medicine bottle. Why at that time? Marple pressed. He asked for it after supper. I thought he needed it. James nodded. I wrote it, 9:15, bottle left. Marple leaned forward, and the door. Beddoes answered at once. Bolted from inside. I knocked. He slid the bolt back. I entered. I set the bottle down. He waved me away again. Then I heard the bolt. Drawn. James confirmed. Indicator board shows blue room occupied at 9:20. Marple's eyes narrowed. And the telephone? James pointed to the log. At 9:05, the hall telephone was lifted. Caller unknown. 2 minutes only. Returned by 9:07, Dolly spoke up. But we were in here. None of us left. Colonel muttered. Then who used it? Beddoes looked away. I could not say. I was in the kitchen, James added. I was in the pantry. I saw no one. Slack entered with his notebook. Waste of time. He drank too much of his own bottle, that's all. Marple looked at him calmly. And yet we have times. 8:45, 9:05, 9:15. All marked, all witnessed. Haydock tapped the glass in his hand. Symptoms don't match simple overdose. His death began before 9:30. Slack frowned. Still locked inside, bolt firm, key within, nothing changes that. Marple's eyes lingered on Beddoes. You heard his voice? Beddoes hesitated. Yes. He told me to set the bottle down. He told me to leave. Marple's voice grew soft. And yet, if he was already slipping, who truly spoke? Silence filled the room. Dolly gripped her shawl tighter. Colonel looked at his wife. Haydock muttered under his breath. James turned another page in his log. He read aloud. 9:40. Bell rang. Logged exact dot, Marple looked around the table, her face steady, her tone sharper now. Then who answered? The bell at 9:40? The room fell quiet. A knock at the door broke it. Mr. Simmons stepped in, his briefcase under his arm, his face pale. Dolly greeted him softly. You came quickly. He nodded. News spreads fast. He placed the case on the table. He opened it, carefully. Papers inside, bound with string. I searched the archives, he said. Man asked about family boundaries, land rights, old divisions. Colonel frowned. Why would he care? Simmons drew one paper free. An old solicitor's draft, handwriting neat, ink faded. One line. Crooked. Marple leaned closer, her eyes sharp. That line is out of place. Simmons nodded. Yes, misaligned. Too high. Ahamassit Vani Haydock frowned. Forged when? Simmons sighed. Not recent. Years back. Someone altered a claim. Someone meant to shift inheritance rights. Dolly gasped. Arthur, you never told me. He shook his head. I knew nothing of this. Slack crossed his arms. A scrap of paper proves nothing. Men die of drink. That is all. Simmons stiffened. No, Inspector. Mand knew. He questioned me last week. He said something was wrong. He wanted proof. He pressed me for access to these papers. Marple asked, quietly. And you allowed it? Simmons looked uneasy. He was persuasive. He hinted at payment. I suspected blackmail. I feared exposure. Colonel's jaw tightened. You should have spoken to me at once. Simmons lowered his eyes. I regret it now. Dolly touched the paper. Her hand trembled. Whose claim does it harm? Simmons hesitated. Yours, perhaps, or Lionel Swin's. The wording alters division of estate lines. A minor change, but dangerous. Haydock leaned back. So Mand found it. He pressed you. Now he is dead. Simmons nodded. Yes. And if the forgery is exposed, scandal follows. Reputation, inheritance, drawn into question. Marple's voice cut the silence. Then the motive deepens. A forged letter. A man who knew. A man who could not be allowed to speak. Dolly looked pale. Blackmail. Always blackmail. Her voice shook. Marple placed a hand on hers. Fear feeds silence, but silence breeds crime. Slack scowled. Still locked inside. Still impossible. Paper or no paper. The door tells the truth. Marple did not answer. Her eyes stayed on the crooked line. Her needles lay still, in her lap. Simmons closed the folder. His hand lingered. He whispered, more to himself than to others. This forgery threatens inheritance claims. The blue room lay silent. Mand's body, still in the chair. Miss Marple moved slowly. Her eyes scanned each corner. She stopped at the wardrobe, large, old, heavy wood. She bent near its side. Her fingers touched a wire. Dolly gasped. What is it? Marple answered softly. A wire, threaded down, anchored with a pin. She traced it further. A tin piece dangled, balanced just enough to slip. The wire stretched to the wall, toward the bell cord. Dr. Haydock leaned in. A contraption? Marple nodded once. Yes, simple. Pull one end. The bell rings. Colonel muttered. Then he could have called us himself. Marple shook her head. Number look closer. She tapped the wire. Hairpin, tin scrap, Not placed by him, placed by another, rigged to sound, later. James frowned. But the board showed Blue Room at 9:40. I logged it. Marple looked at him firmly. And you logged a trick, not his hand. Dolly pressed her hand to her chest. Then Mead was already... Her voice trailed. Marple nodded. Yes. Already beyond help. The bell only staged his presence. Slack stepped forward. Nonsense. Why rig such a thing? Marple's voice stayed steady. To give him life after death. To deceive us. To seal the illusion of time. Simmons muttered low. If he was dead before 9:30, then the card, the call, the bell, everything was a game. Haydock crossed his arms. And that means the killer planned more than poison, planned the hour, planned the story. Slack frowned harder. Still locked, still impossible. Marple ignored him. Her hand rested on the wire again. This was no accident. This was craft. Dolly shuddered. She stepped back. All these years in this house, and tricks built in the walls. Colonel tightened his jaw. No stranger could know this. Marple's eyes moved to Mrs. Beddoes. The housekeeper looked away. James swallowed hard. He whispered, I wrote the log exact. 9:40. If the bell lied, then so did I, though I never meant it. Marple gave him a gentle look. You told the truth as you saw it. The fault lies with the hand that built the lie. The group stood silent. The body, the cup, the wire, the truth, shifting. Marple's voice broke the silence, measured, certain. Someone staged Man Alive at 9:40. The Blue Room remained under watch. Miss Marple stood near the wall, her hand pressed lightly against the panel. She listened. She pressed it again. A faint creak sounded. The linen press shifted. Colonel Bantry stiffened. What in blazes? The press opened. Behind it, a narrow gap, a dark slit in the wall. Marple nodded once, a passage, for maids, for quiet entry. James spoke low. I've seen no record of it. Dolly shook her head. Nor I. It was never used. In my time. Marple stepped closer. She peered inside. The air smelled old. The passage ran behind the wall. It ended near the wardrobe. She pointed. There, that is how the wardrobe connects. That is how the wire was set. Dr. Haydock bent down. He picked up something small, a piece of iron, worn smooth. The key? Marple took it from him. The teeth glistened faintly, fresh scratches on the edge. Recently turned, she said. Simmons frowned. Then the lock was not secure. Someone entered. Someone used this. Marple's tone was calm. Exactly. Not through the door, not by bolt. But here. Behind. Colonel's face darkened. Then the whole thing is false. The locked door, the bell, the hour. Marple gave a small nod. All arranged. To deceive. Dolly trembled. She whispered, So he was already gone, and we were kept waiting for a time that meant nothing. Marple looked at her gently. Not nothing, my dear. It meant alibi. Slack growled. More fantasy. Passages, wires, forged letters, rubbish. The man died alone. Marple didn't answer him. Her eyes stayed on the passage. Her hand rested on the key. James shifted. I serve this house each day. Yet I never knew. Someone else must have searched long before me. Marple's voice softened. Secrets live in old walls, James. Those who seek them, find them. Haydock exhaled. So the killer slipped in. Gave him poison, slipped out, rigged the bell, then bolted the door from inside with the trick key. Marple nodded once. That is the line. Simmons muttered. Then no stranger could have managed it. Only one who knew the shape of this house. Dolly looked toward Mrs. Beddoes. The housekeeper lowered her eyes. Silence held. The body sagged in the chair. The cup sat untouched. The scratches on the key gleamed faintly. in Marple's hand. She spoke softly, certain, final. The killer never used the main door. The house lay heavy, most retired. Only quiet steps moved in the hall. James stirred in the pantry. He heard them soft, quick, uneasy. He followed the sound. The steps led to the servants' hall. Shadows bent long across the walls. A figure bent low near the drawers. "Who's there?" James called. The figure spun. Lionel Swin, his face pale, his hands full of papers. James blocked the door. "What business at this hour?" Swin stammered. "Nothing. I only sought a match." James shook his head. "Matches in the parlor, not here." He reached for the papers. Swin tried to hide them. But James was quicker. He pulled one sheet free, a letter draft, unfinished, torn. Man's name, written at the top, lines of figures, and notes. James dragged him back toward the others. Colonel met them halfway. "What goes on?" James thrust the papers forward. "Caught him sneaking, with this." They gathered in the morning room. Miss Marple took the paper. Her eyes scanned the lines. Mand had written of art sales, references to old canvases, provenance questioned, Swin's name marked beside a forged claim. Simmons adjusted his glasses. Forgery of paintings, falsified history. If this reached buyers, ruin. Swin snapped. "It was only one piece. Man threatened to expose me. He asked money. Too much." Colonel stepped close. "So you quarreled?" Swin swallowed hard. "Yes. He pressed me in London. I swore I would not pay." Haydock folded his arms. "You had motive enough. Silence him, and the papers vanish." Swin glared. "I did not kill him. I came tonight to recover what he stole. That is all." Dolly's voice shook. "You sneaked through my house at midnight, after a man died here. And still you say innocence?" Swin slammed a hand on the table. "Believe what you will. But I had no key, no access, only fear of disgrace." Marple's eyes did not waver. She spoke gently, almost kind. "You were blackmailed. That much is clear. You wished Mand gone. That too is plain. But you are right, Mr. Swin. You lacked something vital." The room stayed tense. Dolly's eyes fixed on Marple. Colonel's jaw stiff. Simmons frowned deeply. Haydock watched, silent. Marple laid the paper flat on the table. Her finger tapped Mand's notes. Her voice rose, calm but certain. "But you still lacked the key." The morning came slow. The house stayed tense. James opened the pantry. He searched for trays. Something small rolled forward. A glass dropper, thin, stained at the tip. He picked it up. A faint smear inside. Not clear, not wine. A strange green film. James carried it straight to Colonel Bantry. "Sir, this was under the shelf. It does not belong here." Colonel frowned. "Show the doctor." Dr. Haydock examined it. He tipped the light through the tube. A streak glowed faintly. Green, viscous. Dolly leaned closer. "It matches the saucer. I saw that color." Marple nodded softly. "Yes, the same stain under Mand's cup." Mrs. Beddoes entered the room. She froze, at once. Her eyes fell on the dropper. Her face turned tight. Colonel asked her directly. "Yours?" She shook her head quickly. "No, sir. I never owned such." James spoke low. "It was under your shelf in the pantry, among your jars and powders." Beddoes's lips thinned. "I keep many things. Herbs, oils, nothing more." Simmons adjusted his spectacles. "But this is not oil. This is instrument, used to measure drops, exact drops." Haydock scraped the inside. With a glass rod, he dabbed it to a strip of paper. He waited. The stain darkened. He muttered, "Not harmless." "I've seen this before." Marple asked quietly, "What plant?" Haydock's jaw tightened. "Foxglove, digitalis, pure poison." Dolly gasped. "Foxglove? That grows near the garden gate, but we never touch it." Haydock nodded. "Deadly. in wrong hands. A few drops weaken the heart. More and it stops. Slack entered then. What now? More fancies? Haydock held up the dropper. Not fancy. Fact. This delivered the poison. Slack scoffed. And who held it? Who dared? No one answered. All eyes turned briefly to Mrs. Beddoes. She stared hard at the floor. Swin broke the silence. Mand must have taken it himself. He knew what he risked. He mixed it. He swallowed it. Marple shook her head. Number. If he meant suicide, why the bell? Why the card? Why the trick? Simmons added softly. And why hide the dropper under pantry shelves? That is no farewell. That is concealment. The room grew heavy. Dolly whispered. Then it was planned, measured, carried out. By hand. Colonel's fist clenched. In my house, under my roof. Marple's eyes stayed fixed. On the dropper. Her voice soft. Her words final. Dr. Haydock confirmed it, plain. Foxglove, pure poison. Mrs. Beddoes stood, stiff, all eyes fixed on her. The dropper lay on the table, the stain still visible. Colonel spoke first. Well, woman, what answer? She did not reply. Her lips trembled. Dolly's voice broke in. Tell us the truth. You must. Still silence. Her eyes watered. Miss Marple leaned forward, her voice steady. Better to speak now. Lies cannot last. Beddoes' shoulders shook. She pressed her hands together. Then she spoke, low. I did it. The room froze. Her words hung heavy. Haydock asked sharply, You used foxglove? She nodded once. Yes, in his bottle, in place of his medicine. Colonel roared. You poisoned him outright. Beddoes raised her hands. No, sir, not to kill, only to scare him, to drive him away. Simmons frowned. Scare him? Why? Her face turned pale. He was blackmailing me, threatening Mrs. Bantry, too. Dolly gasped. Me? Beddoes looked at her, with tears. Yes, madam, he had papers, old things. He said he would ruin you. He said he would drag your name in mud. Colonel growled. Scoundrel. Beddoes lowered her eyes. I could not allow it. You have been kind to me, loyal to me. I owed you. So I acted. Marple's tone stayed calm. You replaced his drops with foxglove. Beddoes whispered. Yes, only a little. I thought it would make him ill, nothing more. Swin muttered. And instead it stopped his heart. Slack snapped his notebook open. Confession taken. That settles it. But Haydock raised his hand. Not so simple. Tell us everything, woman. Beddoes' eyes filled. She spoke, slowly. Years ago. I worked in London, a place they called a baby farm. I cared for unwanted children. Some did not live long. Mand knew of it. He found me here. He said he would tell. Unless I paid. Unless I helped him. Dolly's face turned white. You never told me. Beddoes cried softly. How could I? Shame would follow. I thought I left it behind. But he would not let me. Marple's eyes softened. And so you tried to silence him. Beddoes nodded again, her voice almost gone. I changed the medicine. I slipped the bottle back. I thought he would feel weak. I thought he would beg to leave. Then he would trouble us no more. Her hands covered her face. I never meant his death. I only wanted to protect you, madam. The room stayed hushed. Each face turned away. Only Marple watched her steady, her words clear. Beddoes whispered through tears. I only meant to frighten him. The group gathered, faces tense. Voices hushed. Miss Marple sat forward, her hands folded over her knitting bag, her tone steady. We must see the picture whole, she began, piece by piece, moment by moment. All listened. No one moved. First, she said, the wine glass, at dinner. Mr. Mand tasted. He frowned. Residue left behind. That was the first attempt. A clumsy try. It failed. James nodded slowly. I wrote it in the log. Marple continued. Second, the forged letter. Mr. Simmons brought it. Misaligned line. Proof of tampering. Motive for silence. Man discovered too much. He meant to use it. Simmons lowered his head. I admit it. He pressed me. He knew. Third, Marple went on. The condolence card. Slipped under the door. Your time ends at 9:07. A staged threat. Not a warning for him, a warning for us, to fix the hour in our minds. Dolly whispered, and I kept it hidden. Only you knew. Marple gave a gentle nod. You trusted wisely, but the card was part of the deception. She looked at Colonel, next. Fourth, the bell. At 9:40 it rang, yet Dr. Haydock proved Mand was gone long before. The wire, the tin, the hairpin, a trick to mislead, a sound, without life. Haydock muttered. Yes, he was cold before then. Marple spoke on. Fifth, the passage, behind the linen press, the wardrobe connection, the secret way, the key with scratches fresh. That was how entry was gained. That was how the lock deceived us. Colonel clenched his fist. So he was poisoned earlier and locked in after. Marple's eyes turned to Mrs. Beddoes. You carried the tray at 8:45. You brought the bottle at 9:15. You alone handled both. You alone had means, motive, and chance. Beddoes wept quietly, her voice weak. I only wished to drive him away. Marple's voice stayed calm. You wished to protect Mrs. Bantry. You feared your past. You feared scandal. You thought a small dose would frighten him. Instead, it killed him. Silence followed. Dolly's hands shook in her lap. Colonel stared hard at the floor. Swin leaned against the wall, pale. Simmons closed his eyes. Marple finished softly. He died between 9 and 9:15. Already beyond help when the bell rang, already still when we thought him alive. Her words hung steady. No one spoke. The truth weighed heavy. Slack broke the silence, his voice sharp, his words final. Then this was murder, cold murder. The house had emptied. Officers had gone. Inspector Slack left with his notes. Dr. Haydock followed after, tired, grim. Mrs. Beddoes was led away, her steps slow, her head low. She did not look back. Dolly sat by the fire, her hands still, her face pale. Colonel stood nearby. He said nothing. James cleared the last tray. He moved quietly. He did not meet Dolly's eyes. The house felt stripped. Miss Marple sat close, knitting, untouched. She looked at Dolly, her voice gentle. Do not blame yourself. You gave kindness. She gave loyalty. But fear drove her too far. Dolly whispered. She said she only meant to frighten him, and still, she killed. Her eyes closed. I let her serve this house. For years I never knew her secret. Colonel spoke low. Secrets live long, they rot the walls, and one day they fall open. Simmons had left earlier, his papers locked away, his silence heavy. Swin gone, too. His reputation cracked. Marple leaned forward. Fear drives cruelty. That is the truth. But truth itself, though bitter, restores. Scars remain, but healing begins. Dolly nodded faintly. Her voice trembled. You always see clearer than the rest of us? Marple smiled softly. Not clearer, my dear, only slower. I listen, and listening brings light. The fire burned low. Colonel shifted closer to Dolly. He touched her hand. We endured worse, Dolly. We will endure this, she whispered. Our name stained, our home tainted. Marple answered gently. Your name remains. Your home remains. The shame lies not with you. It lies with the one who chose silence and poison. James returned. He placed the service log on the table. He spoke quietly. I will keep the record safe, so nothing is forgotten. Dolly looked at him with tired eyes. Yes, James, keep it. Truth must stay written. The hall clock struck, slow, heavy. The sound filled the empty house. No one spoke. Marple rose at last, her bag over her arm. She looked once more at the blue room door, her eyes thoughtful. She turned back to Dolly, her words calm. "Take rest. This will pass. What remains is scar, not wound," Dolly whispered. "And yet I fear the silence tonight." Marple nodded gently. Silence is never empty, but it need not always harm. The fire crackled faintly. The house stood quiet, too quiet, and still. In every quiet house waits another locked door.